Hey, folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. I'm Alan Saunders. It is Friday, October 11th. The Pittsburgh Steelers have their final practice of the week of week 6 as they prepare to take on the Las Vegas Raiders this Sunday in Vegas. I will, of course, be there for SteelersNow.com at the giant hockey puck or Roomba looking thing that is Allegiant Stadium there in Las Vegas. Very cool stadium. I will also be before that on Saturday in Los Angeles. I will be at LA Memorial Coliseum for Penn State, USC. Fired up about getting to cover some college football again this year. So make sure you check out that as well. But right now we're going to talk about the Steelers Raiders game. And as I usually do, I'm going to break down one matchup that I think is the most important for the Steelers to win in this game. And then I'm also going to give you my prediction. I will be back with more on the YouTube channel a little bit later after practice, but it'll be DB and Smitty on the afternoon drive as I will be on an afternoon flight flying out to LA around 5 o'clock. So let's get into the Steelers-Raiders game. You know, I had a little slip there as I talked about the Ravens, but, you know, that's the game that I think actually matters here. If you think back to week 2, these Raiders do not look like some sort of giant killer, right? But then they go into Baltimore and beat who I think is one of the best teams in the AFC in the Baltimore Ravens. And like, it wasn't like it was some kind of fluke. It was a convincing victory. And I think that really opened some eyes as to what these Raiders can be. Now, since then, they lost to the Carolina Panthers, which is, of course, a very bad loss. They did beat the Cleveland Browns. We all know the Browns are kind of struggling. Last week kind of got roughed up a little bit by the Denver Broncos. This is not a good Raiders team. Let's be real. But it is capable of beating you if you don't pay attention to it. And the one person on this Raiders team that, especially with Davante Adams out, that should really have your full attention is left defensive end Maxx Crosby. I'm not sure there's ever been a better fit between a player and a franchise than a guy with a neck tattoo playing on the Raiders. Maxx Crosby just looks like a Raider. He plays like one too, man. He is like a hit and run attack master, where he is not the kind of guy like Garrett or like Watt that is necessarily going to dominate play in and play out, where you just can't take your eyes off him, right? He's not quite that level of player. Parsons you could throw into that mix as well, but he is a guy that just when he gets his move off, he makes you pay in a heartbeat. And that's what happened against the Ravens. He had 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, knocked down a pass, had 6 tackles, and he took the game over. He was a monster. The Steelers cannot let him become a monster on Sunday. And the Steelers, you know, the similarity here is that the Ravens, young and inexperienced on the offensive line. The Steelers, young and inexperienced on the offensive line. The right side of the offensive line, especially where he is going to be attacking from. You're talking about Broderick Jones and Mason McCormick. That's 2 young guys. And they're going to have to find a way to deal with them, especially Broderick Jones, man. I think so much of the story of this Pittsburgh Steelers season is going to be told depending on how quickly Broderick Jones can go from a talented but inconsistent player to a more consistent one. You know, I think he obviously had struggles in the preseason. That elbow injury was clearly holding him back. I also had something wrong with his thumb. It was just a mess, right? Gets in there. You know, I didn't think he was so terrible to get benched, but, you know, the Steelers had a pretty solid option, and Troy Fautanu comes in those one series against the Broncos and is just a disaster. Since then, he's been back in the starting lineup, and I think he's been better. I think it was just okay against the Cowboys, especially considering you know, the quality of competition. If you go back and look at the tape to that game, you know, I think Dan Moore is having a lot better time with his backup defensive ends on the left side of the Steelers offensive line than Broderick Jones was on the right. We talked on this show about how Najee Harris has had more success running to the right. That's got to be able to continue. They have to be able to lean on that. McCormick is a heck of a run blocker. Broderick Jones can be a heck of a run blocker. They should be caving in that right side all the time. And it's happening sometimes. It's not happening consistently. And Najee Harris, we've talked about, is not necessarily like the world's wiggliest runner. He's not going to react to things that are happening and just like change the plan mid-course and go a completely opposite direction like someone like Jalen Warren might. Najee Harris is a downhill runner. He wants to gain momentum so that when he does get hit, he can use his size and his frame to run people over. And if the offensive linemen are being inconsistent, Najee Harris starts running towards what he thinks is going to be a hole, and then it turns out not to be a hole. That is a death knell for him. And so it is really on Broderick Jones, I think, to be more consistent. There's some good blocks out there, and he's certainly talented. But I think just giving Najee Harris that constancy, the ability to say Broderick is there, Broderick has that guy, I can run there, and it be right 90% of the time. I'm not sure they're there yet, and I think that's one of the big problems with the running game. And of course, the pass protection is going to have to be good. Crosby will be the best pass rusher the Steelers have faced all season. They faced a banged up Bosa against the Chargers, and hey, to Broderick Jones' credit, he finished him, man. He took him right out of the game. Crosby's on another level, I think. And it's going to be the biggest challenge he's faced in a while. Remember this game last year, the Steelers went to Vegas early in the season. That was the week 4 game. And you remember we spent a lot of time talking last year about whether the Steelers would play Broderick Jones early as a rookie or not. And one of the reasons not to was the early schedule had so many difficult pass rushers on it. They had the 49ers the first week. Then they had the Browns and Myles Garrett. And then I forget it was in week 3, but then it was the Raiders again in week 4. And so this was this early season gauntlet. And so the Steelers didn't play Broderick Jones in this early part just to protect him from these kind of matchups last year. This year, by the way, last year, Chuks gave up 2 sacks, and a bunch of tackles, but no more tackles for loss to Crosby last year. I'm sorry, two sacks. No, 1 sack, 3 tackles. They'll take that. 1 sack, 3 tackles, and an additional quarterback hit. They will take that in a heartbeat. If Broderick Jones can't do what Chuks did against Maxx Crosby, it's not going to be a great sign for how the rest of the season is going to go at right tackle. I think this is a huge challenge for him. I think if he dominates, man, that changes the complexion of this offense for the Steelers. It really helps them get that run game going. It allows them to take more deep shots. Talked a lot about how the offense needs to be more explosive. It is difficult to be explosive when the quarterback is running around. You need time to get receivers down the field, especially when we're talking about receivers that may or may not necessarily be the best at getting separation. It's going to take even more time, and that means pass protection. I don't really love the rest of this Raiders defense. I think this is overall a fairly nice matchup for the Steelers. I don't see a lot of people on here as you go up and down the depth chart. I think Trayvon Marring's a nice safety. I think Robert Spillane's done a really nice job with his career. Tyree Wilson was obviously a first-round pick, but he's still developing. This isn't a defense that just has guys that are going to dominate you. It doesn't. This should be an easy matchup for the Steelers offense. Even in the games where the Raiders have won, they've given up points. I think, you watch that Broncos offense. It was such a mess when the Steelers played it, and now look at how many points it just scored on the Raiders. This has to be a week the offense breaks out. And especially if Justin Fields wants to keep his job, because Russell Wilson's coming, and I think that's a real thing. I think he needs to play well if he wants to keep playing. And then obviously I think we should like the Steelers defense in almost every matchup, but you should obviously like it in one where the other team's best offensive player is not playing and playing their second quarterback of the season. I think the Steelers defense will get the job done. I have some concerns about the Steelers offense. I still think this should be a fairly easy Steelers victory. I'm predicting the Steelers win 24-13 in Vegas, and I do think Broderick Jones can get the job done against Maxx Crosby, but this will be a test, and he's going to have to not only do it this week, but he's going to have to become consistent. That will be the big hurdle for him finally living up to that draft pick status and solidifying the right side of the Steelers offensive line. That's all I got for now. Enjoy DB and Smitty later here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Then I'll be right back here with some live post game from Vegas on Sunday. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and enjoy.